Welcome back to InterviewAt, where we focus on helping you use the Amazon leadership principles to land your dream job. And every week I do office hour videos where I like to talk about content that's outside of the actual mock interviews, which I release once a week. And this week, it's a question that I use all the time. And I use it in interviews to really understand, well, a couple things, but trying to really focus on, can the person do the job? And this is one of those questions that if you're not prepared for, will really reveal a lot about your role in the story that you're presenting, but also your capabilities. And if you don't prepare for this one question, you really are setting yourself up at a disadvantage, because one, if you get asked the question you're not prepared, it's going to be kind of a disaster for you. But two, you can prep for it in such a way that you can introduce the content on your own as part of your framework for your answer and just present as a better candidate overall. So what is this one question you ask? Well, it's real simple. How would you have known you were being successful? That's it. Or how did you know you were being successful? Some variant of that. But basically the question is, you're giving me an answer. I've asked you some question. Tell me about a time you failed. Tell me about a time where you faced adversity. Tell me about a time you had to switch plans midstream. Tell me about a time you had to go several layers deep. Tell me about a time you invented something new. Whatever. Doesn't matter what the question is. Anytime you're executing within an organization, if you're a leader and you're a good leader, you have to know before you start, or you should know before you start, what does success look like? If you haven't defined success before you get started, you're going to create challenges for yourself down the road for obvious reasons, but more importantly, especially the more, we'll call it, well, I guess just big time the firms are that you're trying to go work at, the more refined they are in their processes and the more they expect excellence and kind of top level workers. If you don't have repeatable frameworks for success, it's going to be very hard for you to convince a hiring manager, such as myself when I was in those roles, that you're someone worth bringing into the company, right? A common phrase you'll hear, I don't know how common, it was common in the circles I ran in, but a phrase that got used a lot was, this is not a teaching organization, meaning you already need to know how to play before you get here, right? There's smaller companies or kind of companies that don't have the kind of aspirations that, say, a Facebook, a Google, an Amazon, et cetera, have and expect out of their workers. But, there are organizations that are teaching organizations where you can go in and learn a bunch on the job and up-level your skills, but don't expect to try and go interview at a place like Amazon, especially for the more senior roles, and expect to be able to learn on the job. You'll get blown out of there real fast. And so one way to address this as an individual, if you haven't, even if you didn't do this in the work that you're talking about in your interview, hindsight is a lovely lens. And I mean, let's be honest, we've all used hindsight being 20/20 to kind of fix some things we've done in the past. So the question is, how would you have known you were being successful, or how did you know you were being successful? You can shift the conversation slightly in your answer, which is, well, the way I think about these things now is, right? Or yes, that's if you didn't do it. Or if you did, well, certainly before we got started, this is what we did, right? That's if you could ask the question. STAR format, very important here. Situation, task, that's your beginning. Action, that's your middle. Result, that's your end. The result is where you would introduce this, right? You can give the answer, what happened, but also be prepared to say, we underachieved, we overachieved, we massively overachieved, we didn't quite get there, and here's why. That is a logical question to get asked, and if it doesn't get asked and you answer it anyway, some coaches will tell you, never answer questions you weren't asked, which is complete crap, especially the more senior roles that you're going for. Kind of, we're talking, mid-late career, sorry, not mid-late career, like a couple years out of college to kind of just before executive. And in that band, that's a pretty wide band, but that's, for a lot of the people that come to me and come to this channel, it's mostly tech workers. If you can't speak to the results and you can't do it in a framework that makes sense and have the numbers readily accessible, you're setting yourself up for failure. But when you do speak about them, do so in a way that indicates that not only did you hit some numbers, but you were thinking about it before you got started. And that's how you guys were successful or were not. And if you present it without being asked as part of your answer, right? You got situation, task, again, STAR format. It's a great way to present your answers. Situation, task, action, result. In that result, you can give the answer. Well, we increased sales by 20% year over year, and we achieved revenues of $5 million. Whatever the answer is, but tagging that answer with, it's an interesting thing, because before we got started, we really weren't sure what success would look like. We had some guesses based on the information we had. The information really was a bit muddy, a bit unclear. We didn't have enough data, but we said to ourselves, look, if we can get to $4.5 million of increased sales, we think we're kind of on the right path here. even if as part of your planning you weren't sure, even if you didn't have the data, even if you don't even remember the exact number because it's a 5, 6, 7 year ago thing, it's showing the repeatability of, I know how to set up a plan, I know how to determine what success looks like, I know how to execute against that plan, and we have a framework which tells us if we're being successful, and if we're not, we can make a pivot. So this is a question I see people get tripped up on all the time when they're doing mock interviews with me. I continue to be, quite frankly, shocked that people are ill prepared to talk to this question. So I just thought I would share it with the audience and let you know that, like, this is, if you're going to think about a question that you might get asked that you hadn't thought of, this is top of the list, and you should be prepared. So as always, we do our office hours every week. If there's a question, specific thing you'd like to see addressed, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. I definitely read the comments. I enjoy getting them. Try to respond whenever possible. And if you find this content useful, please go ahead and like and or subscribe. Thanks.